Howdy gamers, and as we all know, I love paper, video games, and sequels, but I also love surprises. Fortunately for me, back in December of 2020 I was robbed. The thief left me some presents, and after the first game was terrible, the second game was amazing, I just couldn't handle the pressure of opening up the third. However, seeing as it's either that or talking about Blinks, I'll take my chances. As a gamer, I love being told what to think about games I haven't played, but Super Paper Mario is the one in the series that I went in with no preconceived notions. Everyone always praises the first two while trash talking the two that came after Super, leaving it mostly out of the discussion. And then on the off chance it is mentioned, it's either people praising it or absolutely hating it, no in between at all. So, allow me to be the person to tell you what you should think of a completely subjective piece of media. It's amazing, but very different from Paper Mario 64 and Thousand Year Door. Sure, the partners are here, there's puzzles, and look, it's Mario, who sure is made out of paper, but that's about it. Yes, and the most controversial decision Nintendo has ever made. Fine, second most controversial decision. Okay, a controversial decision Nintendo made. The Paper Mario series went from being RPG based to, well, it changes between games, but here it's more platforming based. Nonetheless, the shift wasn't entirely out of nowhere. Thousand Year Door actually did have some platforming segments where you'd play as Bowser at the end of chapters, and I actually complained about those when I talked about Thousand Year Door. They were too easy. I feel like New Super Mario Bros. Has had harder levels than what you did in that game, and unfortunately, that's how I feel about the platforming in this game. None of the jumps are really that hard, nor do you have to think about how you're going to overcome some platforming challenge. Typically, if you just press A by the ledge and move in the right direction, you'll be fine. Same can be said about the bosses. Pretty much all are beaten just by jumping on their head over and over again. It sort of gets changed up later in the game when you unlock Bowser, whom you can switch to pretty much just to instantly win any fight, but that's not necessarily a good change. In fact, if you want an idea of how easy the game is, I only died once in my entire 18-hour playthrough and never used an item. I didn't need to because there was no challenge where I was worried I would die, which was for sure disappointing. As another result of this, I never explored in the game because pretty much all you find are items, which, let me remind you, I never used. Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door in the original had some cool items that made the game harder, so it's really disappointing that they didn't bring those back for this game, especially since it would have given me an incentive to explore. Technically, I still had an incentive since they're the optional pixels you can get, but to be honest, I wasn't very interested in them. If you haven't played the game, the pixels, spelled without an E so you don't get them confused with the Adam Sandler movie of the same name, are what replaced the partners from previous Paper Mario games, and other than Tippy, they suck. Don't get me wrong, I love the puzzle solving aspects that they bring, however, they have no personality whatsoever, making them feel like items instead of characters. I could not tell you a single thing about any of them, once again excluding Tippy, which was so disappointing. In the first two games, they were all unique from each other and sometimes would have different dialogue depending on who you had equipped. Conversely, here outside of their introduction, they have no dialogue at all. There's a reason you see people getting tattoos of Bombette and not freaking Thudley. Of course, there's a reason the partners aren't as cool this time around, and that's because of the personality that went into them went into other characters, mainly the ones you switch between. Depending on what character you are, they'll react differently and sometimes be treated differently by other characters. For example, one of the bad guys, Old Chunks, treats Peach less roughly in battle compared to the other characters. He doesn't toss her as hard, deals less damage, and waits politely for her to get back up when she falls down. But even with these swappable characters comes some problems, like how much the game makes you switch between them. Sometimes you'll just come across a large gap that you need to be Peach to jump across, which wouldn't be as bad if immediately after you didn't need to switch right back to Mario because his ability is going 3D, meaning you always want to be him, unless that someone else is needed. It's just tedious at times, whereas with the partners, you're not switching between them as often, meaning I didn't mind. Although, I still do have another complaint about the partners being that some feel very context sensitive. The partners in previous Paper Mario games didn't have this issue since there was the combat they were all used in, but here, only some can be used in combat or for world traversal. So Pixels like Cudge or Fleep, apart from having really stupid names, can only be used for solving puzzles, making them feel even more two-dimensional. Also, I know I said this game was amazing, but I've just been going on complaining about it, and that's just because I feel like getting all the bad stuff out of the way first, and even then, a lot of these are nitpicky. For example, I wish I could pick whether I want to improve health or attack after leveling up. This was something the early games did that I commended, since it allowed you to have your own unique build in a sense, even allowing for challenges on subsequent playthroughs. But there's nothing here even close to a build you can make, seeing as not only is choosing what you want to level up gone, but even the badges. To be fair, I don't think badges could have worked in this context since it's a platformer, not an RPG. However, it is sad to see another staple of the series gone. Although, even if they were here, I don't know if anyone would want to replay Super Paper Mario since the beginning portion is very slow. Sure, some cool stuff does happen story-wise, but as far as the puzzles go, you can rip out the first few pages of your Prima strategy guide because they couldn't have made it any more boring if they tried. For the first hour or so, all the puzzles the game throws at you can just be solved by pressing the A button. However, they do get much better later on, and in my opinion, are the best the series has to offer. Thanks to the de-emphasis on combat, we can get stuff like level 5-2 and 5-3, where the whole level is just one big puzzle, and the other ones still have amazing environmental ones. But not too difficult, they're all satisfying to solve, and as an added bonus, the game has very little backtracking, so even though the platforming wasn't challenging, the game still managed to be fun from a gameplay perspective with the genius puzzle design. But of course, most people don't remember this game for the puzzles, which just goes to show how amazing and memorable the world design, story, and characters are. Even though I absolutely despise this game's version of the Partners, I still think this game has the best lineup of characters in the series. And for those Paper Mario Sticker Star fans out there, I'm sorry I haven't played that game yet, but I'm sure characters like Green Toad and Yellow Toad are super endearing. However, this game has a lizard who owns robot cat maids. And surprisingly, despite how relatable Francis is, he's not even my favorite character because, you know, Count Black. He's the main villain of this game, and even though he's been in the same amount of Mario games as freaking Abraham Lincoln, he still manages to be the second most memorable villain this series has ever had. He's such an interesting antagonist because we don't really know his true motives right away. Instead, it gets slowly revealed to us as the game goes along in a great way. He's not even the only villain though. He also has a whole group of lackeys that are like Koopalings if they were actually good. Some are definitely better than others, with my favorite being Demento, and I think anyone who's beaten the game will agree with me on that. And even if some are more generic than others, the fact that they all have unique designs was super cool to see. The Paper Mario games before this definitely had unique designs for characters, but they were mostly based on previously existing Mario races, so seeing new faces is refreshing in a way. They aren't even the only unique characters in this though. I already mentioned the Pixels, but everyone in this game besides the occasional basic Mario enemies are from a new race. Some don't like the art style that they have, and although it's not the greatest out there, I didn't mind and was just happy to see something new. The game takes place outside the Mushroom Kingdom, so it's fitting. Instead of Rogueport or Toad Town for the main hub area, we get Flipside, an interdimensional town that, while I don't think it's as good as its predecessors, comes very close. Getting to explore more and more of it as the game went on was awesome. As you get more pixels, you're able to use them to progress further into the town, uncovering secrets almost like a Metroidvania, and it's all pretty natural in my opinion. Unfortunately, Flipside isn't as connected to the chapters as I would like, because you just go through a portal to enter them all, which was disappointing. I love when video games feel like one giant interconnected world, but Super Paper Mario sort of goes for the opposite of that. However, it's not all bad, because at the very least, it allowed for more diverse worlds like space or the Stone Age. I should probably talk about these different worlds actually, because they're pretty neat. The game as a whole is presented almost like a book, and each world represents a different chapter. They even have a title card for each one, and one of my favorite little details is that the theme of each one is remixed according to the content of each chapter. I mean, the main content is the same, they'll have you collecting a different Pure Heart, but you do it differently each time and in unique locations, so it never gets old. You might be doing a dating simulator in a weeb's castle, or finding some people lost inside of a mine, making it more about the journey rather than the destination. My only real complaint about this structure is that each chapter is split up into 4 different parts, which I hate. I get it, it's supposed to be a callback to how the original Super Mario Bros. Had 4 different parts in a world, and in a sense it's also a callback because just like that game, it's not great. I said it earlier, but when a game is all interconnected, it makes me happy and want to draw fan art of the game. But when it's not, especially for such a superfluous reason like this one, it blows. Almost always the segment ends and then picks back up a few feet to where the previous one left off, making it feel like a missed opportunity. It just leads to the world not feeling as real and in my opinion broke up the flow of everything. Of course, maybe I should actually talk about what those pure hearts I just mentioned are. They're the fun MacGuffin of this Paper Mario game, and you need to collect them so that we can save the world from destruction. Listen, I know that sounds super generic, and no one wants a super generic plot in a Mario game, but it gets much better. It's really only the first half of the game that things continue in that direction, but around halfway through, the game subverts expectations and the story gets much better. Like, obviously the good guys win in the end, but it's not as simple as that. We win, but some things are lost along the way. It's definitely my favorite story in this series. Like, there's literally a point in the game where Mario goes to hell, and I can only imagine what sort of atrocities he committed for him to go there.
I hear he pirated a 35-year-old NES game.
That's not even to say the story is bad for the first half, it's just more of what you would expect from a Mario game. Except there is one interesting part to it. Between each chapter, you get this ongoing story between two people in love who can't be together that's really endearing, and I enjoyed reading as things went on. It's made even better by the fact that it's a mystery who these people are, and although at first I thought it might be Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, as the game went on I wasn't so sure, because you get a better idea on who it is leading up to the twist at the end. And to make it even better is the music accompanying these memory segments. The piano melody gets more corrupted as things go on, which was such a nice touch because it perfectly mirrored what was happening in the memories themselves. Honestly, the rest of the soundtrack in this game is just as good. It's surprising it doesn't get talked about more when Mario OSTs are discussed. There's stuff like Outer Space that sounds like it's straight out of Mario Galaxy, and there's even times where they remix past Mario songs into something more modern that sounds amazing even on its own. Finally, in case anyone was wondering, the game is just as funny, if not more, than Thousand Year Door in the original Paper Mario. The writing is top notch. The lines of dialogue in this game are all great, except for when the game told me to change batteries every time I got to a save block. Yeah game, I know my batteries are low, it's called living life dangerously, frick off.
That was Super Paper Mario, and for a paper-based video game that's a sequel and a surprise, I'm not too sure what else I could have asked for. I mean, other than the spin dash and for the game to be challenging. I'd still give it a 93 out of 100 though. Despite how amazing it is, the game is just worse than the first two games. Also, I'd definitely give this my worst paper video game award, because this is definitely the worst paper-based video game I've ever played. Frick, I've got to stop ending sentences like that. I guess it's just one of the worst paper-based games I've ever played. I haven't played Paper Mario Sticker Star yet, so I can't really judge whether this is the worst paper-based game or that is. So, I guess I'll have to play Paper Mario Sticker Star next to see if this game is worse than that game. But until then, remember to stay safe and that I love you guys.